Hi guys! I'm so excited about this video because it has been months since I've got to say this, but welcome to my review of Pretty Little Liars episode 611 of Late I Think of Rosewood. Oh, I was so pleased to have Pretty Little Liars back this week. It's funny because I wasn't actually sure how I was going to feel about it given the way that the previous half of the season ended. The A reveal with the whole CC situation was, for me, complicated in that, in one hand, I kind of liked it and I kind of understood it, and looking back, I could kind of see what they've been doing. But on the other hand, I'd built myself so much up to want it to be this like huge betrayal by someone that we really knew really well, so like someone like Arya. And because I'd built myself up for that, it was in some ways a little bit of a letdown. So I'd been kind of conflicted by the time that 6A finished. And I thought, oh, when 6B starts, it's just they're starting a new mystery, so is it just all going to feel a bit old hat and repetitive? And then the minute I started watching it, I was just like, yeah, I'm on board with this. So this episode is set 5 years into the future after the end of 6A. The girls have all gone off to college to kind of, grow up and get themselves out into the world. And of course, with the exception of Emily, who I'll get to in a minute, they have all left college and immediately landed very impressive, high-powered, successful jobs. Hannah is working in the fashion industry as an assistant to a designer and seems to be travelling the world with the collection, going to Paris and all the kind of fashion capitals of the world with this fashion line. Spencer's working as a lobbyist in Washington and her mum is running for state senate, which is pretty impressive, and also I kind of love Veronica Hastings, so I'm on board with that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a surprise that Spencer is doing something successful in politics because it just seems like such a good fit for her. And then we've got Arya, who seems to be working for a publishing company but doing a lot of their media stuff. So the episode opens with Alison teaching her class in Rosewood High. Who would let Alison be a teacher at Rosewood High? This is a question that I have. Not only for, the sort of sake of the school, because after, the name Alison De Laurentiis, which again I'll get to in a minute, surely is pretty well known by the Rosewood community. I don't necessarily know that I would want my kid being taught by Alison. I know she's older now and she's matured and, she's been through a lot, whatever. But I don't necessarily know that working at the high school that you went to when you were, a teenager involved in a crazy situation where you and your friends were continually tortured and abducted is the best thing. So Charlotte has been in treatment for the past 5 years in some sort of psychiatric hospital, and it is time to decide whether or not she is going to be released back out into the world. Alison writes a pleading letter to Spencer, Hannah, Arya and Emily to say, would you please come back to Rosewood and basically stand up in court and say, yes, I'm comfortable with the thought of Charlotte De Laurentiis being released out into the world. Of course the girls are all like, no, we're not comfortable with that, but as is typical Pretty Little Liars situation, the relationships and the friendships between the girls, even after all that Alison put them through, mean that they kind of feel this weird obligation as Alison's friends to do what she's asking. I'm skipping forward a little bit just to get this section of the episode out of the way, and I'll go back to the kind of main bits of the episode that I really enjoyed in a minute. But they eventually agree, after they've come back to Rosewood and they've talked to Alison, they agree to go to this hearing, and one by one, Spencer, Hannah and Emily all say, yes, I'm not afraid of Charlotte. And if she's out of this hospital and living her life as a free person, I will be comfortable with that. And then it gets to Arya, and Arya stands up to start making her statement. She gets a bit sort of stuttery. She's reading something that she's written in advance and talking about how the doctors feel that she's ready to be let out. At which point she's asked directly, no, we want to know exactly how you feel. Would you feel safe if she was out? And Arya has some flashbacks to being in the dollhouse and being tormented by Charlotte. And she says, no, I would not feel safe. I was very pleased about this. I was so glad that someone had the guts to just be like, do you know what? No, this is ridiculous. If you had been tormented by this person, even though she's obviously been through a lot in her life and Charlotte has a lot of issues, if someone had tried to kill you multiple times and had framed you for murder and trapped you in a crazy dollhouse and, tormented you and your friends for several years, you wouldn't, even if they were a relative of someone that you were pals with, you wouldn't go, yeah, do you know what, just let her out, it's fine. So, getting down to the parts of the episode that I really want to talk about and dissect. The reunions between everyone, I really, really, really loved. I liked the way that they did this, and I liked that this episode really did properly take time to have people catch up with the important people in their life, or catch up, you know, with the people who were important to them when they were in Rosewood. So as it transpires, none of our couples who were together in seasons, you know, 1 to 5 have lasted. None of them are still together. We have Arya and Asia, who weren't together at the end of 6A anyway, but they haven't found their way back to each other. Toby and Spencer have split up, and Hannah and Caleb have split up. So we don't know at this point exactly what has happened. From the sounds of things, from a conversation that Toby had with Emily, which was a scene that I really enjoyed. I like that they had the little kind of friendship between them brought back to the surface, because we didn't see a lot of that towards the kind of latter parts of this series. So it was nice that they had that little conversation, and for him to kind of say, I really wanted to stay in Rosewood and Spencer didn't. She wanted to move away, she wanted to be in Washington, and we just kind of drifted apart, which is kind of the gist that I got from that. One thing that Emma and I were talking about last night was the fact that I thought of all people, Toby would not be on board with staying in Rosewood. I know that he joined the police force, as hilarious as that was, and all that stuff, and so I know that he has a job there and whatever, but of all the people who hated being in Rosewood, Toby really hated it, and one of the only reasons that he stayed there, as far as I was concerned, was for Spencer. So Emma and I were saying that last night. We were kind of like, that seems weird that, you know, Emily made a comment at one point saying, who would have thought that you and Alison would be the only two left in Rosewood? And he's like, oh yeah, I know. And you're like, you hated it here. Why on earth would you stay? Obviously he has to stay because Toby has to be there for the rest of the season, so otherwise why would he come back? So he had to still be living there, and is building a house for some girl. Much as though I liked Spolby, I was always a Spencer and Toby fan. I think probably of the, you know, of the breakups, it's one that I do quite understand. They were on quite rocky ground for quite a long time. There was a lot of ups and downs in their relationships. They kind of broke up and got back together and drifted apart and then drifted back to each other so many times over the course of the seasons that I kind of get why that would get exhausting, and that eventually you might just feel that you're just not right for each other anymore. And so, much as though I really like them together, I kind of get why they've split them up. What I kind of don't get is why they split up Hannah and Caleb. And this is something that Emma and I spent a very long time discussing last night, is the Spaleb-Haleb triangle. Now, Hannah seems to be engaged to someone else. Don't know who this guy is, we haven't actually met him yet. We will be meeting him in the next episode if the trailers are anything to go by. But I just can't see, and I've said this before, I said this in my review of the promo a couple of months back, that I genuinely can't see why Hannah and Caleb would split up. I really can't see it. I thought that of all the couples that were together up until the end of the last season, they were the ones that were the strongest. They were the one that had the most supportive, consistent relationship, where it didn't matter what happened other than that bizarre time that he went to Ravenswood. It didn't really matter what happened, they were always there for each other and they really loved each other. And at the end of 6-8, they were planning on moving to New York together. He had a job in New York, he was getting them an apartment, it was all set. And I just find it very strange that they split them up. And now moving on to the kind of Spencer-Caleb thing, I would like to take a momentary pause to flash back to a video I made a while ago, so I'm just going to do that now. The next question is, what is your favourite ship that would never actually happen? Now, just in terms of like couples that aren't actually realistically going to be put together, I would kind of like to see Spencer and Caleb, because I really like the friendship that they've developed over the course of like season 5. So the sort of times that they've been working together, where Spencer's been helping him to decode things and all that. There's been little sort of hints at that. I just think that they have a nice chemistry, and it's totally different to the chemistry between Hannah and Caleb. However, I would be heartbroken if they broke up, Hannah and Caleb. So that is the one that definitely won't ever happen, but I think has potential to be cute. See, I called the Spaleb chemistry ages ago. I really always enjoyed scenes that Troy and Tyler did together, because I thought that there was this really fun chemistry between them. It was very different to the kind of Caleb and Hannah chemistry. It was a different sort of relationship that they had. There was a sort of intellectual spark there that I really enjoyed. And so I always really liked their friendship together and felt that there was some sort of spark there. But I never thought that they would break up, Hannah and Caleb, and I never thought that they'd do anything about this. Now, in terms of the actual chemistry, as I say, I actually really like it. And in this episode, the sort of hints towards the Spencer and Caleb relationship, I don't quite know what they're doing, because this again was something that Emma and I talked about at great length last night, is the fact that if there is something between Spencer and Caleb, if they are together or they are contemplating getting together, or even if they've just slept together once in Washington, whatever it is that has happened between them, the fact that he rushed to Rosewood to go and see Hannah doesn't really make a lot of sense. The way I kind of see it, what I hope that they're going to do, because there's another show, and I'm not going to talk about what it is in case you've never seen it before and I don't want to spoil it for you, but there is another show that did this, and they had a couple together, or sort of on off together, for 4 seasons, who the audience was obsessed with, the audience loved and said, you know, OTP material, love them together. And then I think they got to a point where they were like, is this a bit boring, and it's a bit predictable, and it's a bit repetitive, it's just on again, off again, going on and on and on. Right, we'll try and keep them apart for a little while, and we'll do something to fill in, you know, the gap. And they then started a relationship between one of these characters and someone else who people hadn't maybe quite expected to get together. But for me and for a lot of other people, it actually really worked, and it was really nice, and people responded very positively to it. So what they ended up with was a completely split fan base, where they had one half rooting for one couple and then the other half of their audience rooting for the other, and it just became a big mess. And they realised that they couldn't please everybody, and they then totally panicked towards the end of it and went, oh no, okay, right, we'll split everybody up, we'll go straight back to the start, and then we'll put the first couple just back together, and that, you know, that'll be fine. And it was incredibly frustrating, and it didn't really make a lot of sense, and it was a waste of some really good writing and a really good storyline that they sort of put through it. And I just don't want Pretty Little Liars to go down this road. I feel like if they're going to have Caleb and Spencer together in any sort of capacity, it has to be serious, it has to really mean something, and it has to be that they're both kind of in it for the long haul, because I can't deal with them having like some random fling. I can't cope with any sort of unnecessary sort of messing up of the Hannah and Spencer friendship. Hannah and Spencer are my 2 favourite characters, so I don't want them falling out. I don't want any unnecessary like friction between them. I don't want any unnecessary friction between Caleb and Toby, which if trailers are anything to go by, there's going to be. So I feel like if they're going to do this, they just need to be brave and do it properly. They just need to go for it. They need to take the bull by the horns and be like, right, do you know what? Hannah and Caleb are done. They're done, and we know that this is a shock to the system for everybody, but they've just been through too much together for them to ever be able to properly just have a normal relationship, and maybe do it that way and say that all of the couples who were together in the first part of this show, which was set, you know, 5-6 years in the past, they were teenagers, they were being tormented by age, they'd been through so much that the relationship, no matter how much they loved the other person, was only ever going to remind them of that time in their lives. And they were always going to have that sort of connection to the A time of their lives. So then moving forward, they could say Hannah and Caleb just couldn't get past that, neither could Spencer and Toby, neither could Ari and Asia, neither could, I was going to say Emily and Paige, but Paige isn't here, but you know what I mean. None of them could really move forward like that, so splitting up for all of them was the right thing to do. They're hopefully all going to be able to remain friends on some level, and Spencer and Caleb have found each other, and they, you know, are going to be happy together. They need to do that, or they need to leave it alone and just don't have anything happen, because I don't want them to just randomly kiss at one point and then be like, oh no, we can't do this to Hannah, and then have Hannah fall out with them, and then, I don't know, Hannah's getting married and Caleb bursts in and goes, Hannah, I love you and I'm really sorry, I should never have kissed Spencer, and all of that nonsense. Like, this group of friends is too close to have something like that happen. And it's something I've always really respected about Pretty Little Liars in comparison to certain other sort of teen genre shows, is that they've never had the girls fall out over romantic relationships. They've never had a guy come between the friendship group. There's no kind of blurring of lines, blurring of boundaries. There's very clear kind of lines. The only slight kind of overlaps, I suppose, that there have ever been was that there was that sort of weird time where Spencer and Rain were sort of, they'd kissed a few times and no one really knew what was going to end up happening with them. And then Hannah ended up kissing Rain at one point. That's really the only overlap that we've had, and even at that, it didn't really matter because Spencer was with Toby. She wasn't interested in anything else happening with Rain. Hannah wasn't even really interested in anything happening with Rain. She just felt vulnerable, and he was there, and he's very pretty. And I think she got a little bit carried away. So that's the only overlap that we've had. And I just don't want there to be any unnecessary fallouts or any unnecessary friction caused by this storyline. So yeah, in summary, if they're going to do it properly and they are going to be brave and they're going to rip off the band-aid and not have any and not have any going back and forward between them, I am on board with the Spaleb situation. I think they're very cute together. I think that they have a really nice chemistry, and as someone who is a huge Hannah and Caleb fan, this is a lot for me to be saying, but they got to do it properly. Got to do it properly. Don't want no nonsense, no will they, won't they, to and fro and unsure of what's going to happen, and then, as I say, something dramatic like they're sort of together but Caleb could never really move on from Hannah and Spencer could never really move on from Toby, so they both go their separate ways at the end, and Caleb interrupts the wedding ceremony and Spencer knocks down the house that Toby's building for whoever this girl is, and they all get back together. I can't be bothered with that nonsense, so none of that, thank you. Be brave or leave it alone. Have it that there was potential for something to happen between Spencer and Caleb. Have it that there's a vibe that had it been a different lifetime, and in another life they might have made a really good couple, but in the case of this, there's just too much water under the bridge. There's too much love still left between Spencer and Toby and Hannah and Caleb, and you know that they would never go there. Do that or have them in it for the long haul. That is my feelings about that. Okay, so now that I've ranted about that for a while, I'm going to move on to the Arya-Ezra situation. Ezra, this is the storyline out of this that kind of bothers me the most. I know Pretty Little Liars likes to do things dramatically, and nothing's ever simple, and nothing ever just, floats along normally. It's always very dramatic, something huge and, unexpected's always happened. But seriously, Ezra's gone off to wherever it was with this girl, Nicole, who's Rebecca Reed's, and she gets kidnapped by, I don't know, some sort of group of activists or something who've taken her away, and no one knows if she's alive or dead. I thought the crazy happened in Rosewood, and I know that these things unfortunately happen, but what are the chances of Ezra leaving Rosewood after all of the A-related crap that's happened in Rosewood and going off to wherever it was, I still can't remember where they went, with this girl and their kind of group, and she gets kidnapped and taken away? I mean, that just kind of exhausted me a little bit. If they wanted Ezra to be they could have had angry, sad Ezra, which I think is what they're building up to in this season. And I'm pleased, because I've said this before, I like it when they give Ian Harding more to do than look longingly after Arya. I like it when they give him some more kind of, interesting stuff to do, because I think he acts it very well. And so I'm pleased in that sense. I'm pleased that they're giving him the opportunity to do something different. But they could have just had it that he was suffering from sort of not PTSD, but after everything that happened with after everything that happened between him and Arya, after what happened to the girls, that would be enough to really push anyone over the edge. Which I think is sort of what seems to have happened with Emily. Emily had been through all of the A stuff, she had, gone through all of that trauma, and then she's lost her dad. Which again, I mean really, they really just love to give these poor characters horrible, horrible things to deal with. But she's lost her dad, which is very sad, and obviously just hasn't quite been able to move on, and is lying about having finished college or whatever it is. We're still not quite clear on what the situation with that is, but she's working at a bar on some beach somewhere, so she's clearly not doing what she's saying she's doing. And that makes sense, because she's been traumatised. She's been through a horrible, horrible time. And not everyone is going to be able to bounce back from that as well as Hannah and Spencer and Arya seem to have. And so I think that it was nice and realistic that they had at least one of them really struggling. But they could have done the same thing with Ezra. They didn't have to have some weird storyline about Nicole being kidnapped somewhere to make it make sense that he was unhappy. He'd been through some crap. It makes sense that he would be unhappy. Anyway, that kind of bothered me. I did like the Ezra and Arya kind of reunion. I loved all of those moments. I loved when Spencer and Toby sort of met up and talked. I loved when Arya and Ezra did. I really liked the Hannah and Caleb scene. even though it was kind of just full of like weird kind of dropping hints about the Spencer situation, where he's like, oh, Spencer called me. He's like, Spencer called you? Yeah, I was with her when she got the letter. Suspicious. Oh, I'll get you a room to stay at the hotel if you want. Like, my mum runs this place. Another thing to discuss in a minute. No, it's okay. I'm staying in Spencer's barn. And then when Spencer's talking to Toby and he mentions Caleb, she's like, oh, you guys still talk? This is the thing. They did it very cleverly in that they never had anything explicitly visually happen between the characters, so you still don't know for sure. But the things that they said make it kind of impossible for it to mean anything else. These references to each other, if they're just pals, it doesn't make any sense. Like, they wouldn't be like, oh, this is weird, like, we should try and, you know, sort of not make a big deal of this. If they're just friends, then why are they hiding it? Like, unless, I said this to Emma, unless Caleb did something terrible to Hannah, which, given the fact that when she greeted him at the door, she didn't look particularly angry with him. She looked confused, but she didn't really look angry with him. I don't think he did. Unless he cheated on her, did something absolutely awful to her. There's no reason why Hannah would be angry at Spencer and Caleb staying friends, because they were friends anyway. So I don't know, it's bothering me, but I'm really looking forward to see what they're going to do with this. But anyway, that's me flipping back to the Caleb Spaleb stuff. I really like that little reunion moment with Arya and Asia. I kind of want them to end up together at the end, if I'm honest. I've gone back and forward about this, but I kind of do. And I think that they've got some interesting stuff planned for Asia this season, so I'm looking forward to that. Radley is now a hotel. I'm glad that they've done something interesting with it, but I'm simultaneously slightly sad that Radley isn't there in its old form for us to kind of experience again, because some of the creepiest scenes in Pretty Little Liars happened at Radley, and so we're not going to get any more of that unless it's flashbacks, I guess. So I don't know, I'm kind of I'm confused about that. I think I like it, actually. I like that they've made it into something very, very different. They've transformed it, and that's the way that Caleb kind of described it, said people are allowed do-overs, so why shouldn't buildings be, kind of thing. So I like that, and the fact that Ashley's running it is sort of bizarre, but I'm really pleased for her because I love Ashley. I think she's a great character. I love Hannah and Ashley's relationship, so I thought that was really nice. So towards the end of the episode, I kind of enjoyed the tipsy scenes where they were drinking in Bradley and sitting kind of bonding and talking about their lives and their pasts and Charlotte and whatever. I really enjoyed that. And then the hungover scene the next morning was quite entertaining. And then I guess I should really address the fact that Charlotte killed herself. Or did she? Clearly she was murdered. From the word go, you know that that's what it is. But what I quite liked, and I know that a lot of people were like, oh, this again, but I really liked the parallels to the pilot and to the first season. So I liked that Charlotte fell from the bell tower. I know that a lot of people were like, oh, for heaven's sake, the bell tower again, but I like that, not that she died, that's a shame obviously, so it's very complicated, but the bell tower reference, and then the whole kind of funeral and outside the church reaction with the police situation was all such a massive, just like flashback to season 1, that I really enjoyed that. I thought that it was a lot of fun. I thought that it was nicely done, nicely written. I read an article yesterday, it was talking about another excuse for the girls to wear inappropriate black dresses, which it totally was. But I really liked that. I thought that it worked well, that it was an interesting kind of, as I say, parallel to what happened way back at the beginning, so it does kind of feel like, oh my god, is this it all beginning again? Which I think could have just been really cliched and silly, but I actually thought that it worked pretty well. So that was good. The Sarah thing, is she blind? This is what I'm not 100% sure about, because I assumed that, because obviously that was a huge parallel to the Jenna situation, her walking in as the Black Widow but being helped in by somebody. She did look round at them, but I got the sense that she was just genuinely like turning her head round to make them feel uncomfortable. I don't know that she could actually see them, and otherwise why would that guy be helping her in? Because it didn't look like she had anything wrong with like her ability to walk. So did she get blinded that night? Because again, like, another very massive parallel to the early parts of the series. I think that's what's happened, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'm looking forward to kind of finding out more about that. Sarah's involvement in all of this has bothered me for a while, so I really hope that we're going to find out more about that, find out more about what actually happened to her, and also what her relationship with Charlotte actually was. It did seem weird that Sarah would be there if she was being held by Charlotte against her will, unless it was some sort of Stockholm Syndrome type situation. So I'm looking forward to finding out more about that. I missed Jason. I wish Jason was in the episode. I hope he's coming back. In terms of who has killed her, I just don't know what to think. I kind of hope that this time they make it a huge betrayal shock thing. Not that it's as much of a betrayal when it's A who has died, rather than A tormenting them. I just would really like it to be quite a big shock. I always like that. That's what I enjoy about this show, is the twists and turns. So I cannot wait for the next episode, and I will be reviewing it. So let me know in the comments down below if you enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought of the episode, what your favourite bits were, bits that you didn't like, just your feelings, general feelings towards 6B thus far, and what your hopes are for the rest of the season. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up to let me know. And if you haven't already subscribed, remember to hit subscribe so that you can catch up with all of my reviews as they go up. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye! I just wanted to have a bit of a chat about the things that I'm watching at the moment, things that I'm planning to watch throughout the month of January, things that I'm reading at the moment, and really just have a bit of a casual